Welcome back to Crime Scene 24/7. To our returning subscribers, thank you for always engaging. Your likes, comments, and shares keeps us motivated. And if this is your first time here, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our chilling crime scenes. Here we dig deep, we investigate hard, and we bring you stories the mainstream left unsaid. So encourage us by engaging in our videos. Subscribe if you haven't, like, comment, and share. In the quiet suburbs of Chicago in the early 1970s, a contractor named John Wayne Gacy posed as a friendly neighbor and party clown until the day police uncovered a crawl space beneath his home filled with bodies. He would eventually confess to murdering at least 33 teenage boys and young men. But how did this well-liked member of the community evade suspicion for so long? What clues were missed? And what horrors lay hidden in the house of the man children believed to be Pogo the Clown? In the next hour, we'll expose how a man who wore balloons and painted faces hid death beneath his own floorboards, and why 5 of his victims still remain unidentified, and what investigators discovered about the man behind the mask stunned even veteran detectives. March 17, 1942. John Wayne Gacy is born in Chicago. Decades later, on the surface, he seemed the very definition of respectability. A successful contractor, a devoted father, even a party clown named Pogo who entertained children. But beneath the facade lay a predator. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young men and teenage boys into his suburban Norwood Park Township home. He offered jobs, he patted their shoulders, he smiled and locked the door behind them. Then, the horror began. One of the earliest known victims was 16-year-old Timothy McCoy, whom Gacy met at a Greyhound bus station in 1972. The teenager never left. On December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Peast walked into the home pharmacy of Gacy's contracting firm. He told his mother he was meeting a contractor about a summer job, and he vanished. Within days, law enforcement intensified surveillance on Gacy. On December 21, 1978, police executed search warrants on Gacy's home. They discovered 26 bodies in the cramped crawl space beneath the house. Others were found inside the house or dumped in the nearby Des Plaines River. The community reeled. A man who wore a clown costume to birthday parties. A man who shook hands with local politicians. A man who buried his victims under his own floorboards. But what kept many investigators awake at night was how long Gacy operated undetected, and how normal everything looked. This was not a case of someone hiding in the shadows. The monster lived between neighbors, laughed at parties, won community awards, and the body count kept rising. The evidence was looming: lime trenches in the yard, a stench complained of by neighbors for years, and bodies in bags beneath the house. Yet the facade held. After years of missing person investigations, victim families, and internal suspicions, Gacy was finally indicted on 33 counts of murder in March 1980. But just when detectives thought they were done digging, they found a diagram, a map drawn by Gacy himself, revealing the full horror under his home, and that evidence would change everything. Once Gacy's friendly facade cracked, investigators moved quickly, but the road was far from simple. In December 1978, after the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest from a suburban Des Plaines pharmacy, the local police began focusing on Gacy. His home at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park Township had suddenly become the center of suspicion. On December 21st, officers obtained a search warrant, and what they found changed the case forever. Under the crawl space floorboards of the house, human remains were discovered, dozens of them. As forensic teams started exhuming body after body, the magnitude of Gacy's crimes became chillingly clear. Some victims were wrapped in plastic, buried with lime. Others were found in the nearby Des Plaines River. In the lab, anthropologists and dental experts scrambled to identify the remains. 23 of the victims were identified via dental records. Some are still unidentified today. Meanwhile, detectives uncovered Gacy's pattern. He lured young men to the house under pretense of work, freed them by wearing handcuffs as part of a magic trick, subdued them, murdered them, then buried them beneath his home. Observers ask, How did a man who entertained children as Pogo the Clown and hosted hundreds of neighbors fool everyone? Gacy's community standing, his participation in politics and charity events, offered him a layer of protection few questioned. But when investigators pulled the floorboards and found a diagram Gacy himself had drawn, showing the exact locations of the bodies, they realized the facade was just the beginning. Behind the facade of construction contracts and birthday parties, John Wayne Gacy was hiding the makings of a monster. Born March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, Gacy was the second of 3 children. His childhood was marked by an abusive, alcoholic father and a mother burdened by the chaos at home. In 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting a teenage boy in Iowa and was sentenced to 10 years, but served only 18 months. By 1971, he had relocated back to Chicago, started a construction business, and in 1976 he adopted a new public persona, Pogo the Clown, entertaining children at hospitals and community fundraisers. But beneath the paint and balloons lay a pattern of deceit and murder. From January 3, 1972, when 16-year-old Timothy McCoy disappeared after meeting Gacy at a Greyhound bus stop, the killings began. Over the next 6 years, Gacy would lure, abduct, and kill at least 33 young men and teenage boys, many of whom were buried in the crawl space of his Norwood Park Township home. His dual life went unsuspected because he was the nice guy in the neighborhood. The one who helped cook dinners at the local JC's, the one parents let entertain their children, the one who appeared to have it all. At the same time, those who paid attention saw warning signs, boys disappearing, strange odors coming from his house, the presence of lime trenches in the basement. But when investigators uncovered the map Gacy himself had drawn, marking the exact spots beneath his house where young men were buried, they realized the facade had been shattered forever. The discovery of 33 young men and teenage boys buried beneath the Norwood Park home of John Wayne Gacy transformed a quiet Chicago suburb into the epicenter of one of America's most notorious murder investigations. In early 1979, a Cook County grand jury formally indicted Gacy on 33 counts of murder, making it the largest number of victims ever charged in a single U.S. case at the time. On February 6, 1980, the trial opened before Judge Louis B. Garripo in a case that riveted the nation. The prosecution presented chilling evidence, Gacy's own confession, forensic details linking remains to his home crawl space, and photographs of victims' personal effects. The defense argued he was legally insane, but the prosecution insisted he was calculating and aware of his actions. After 5 weeks of testimony, the jury took just 1 hour and 50 minutes to convict Gacy on March 12th. The following day, they returned death sentences on 12 counts and life sentences on the remainder. Public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Families of the victims appeared in court, clutching photos of young lives stolen, demanding closure. Outside, community vigils and media coverage became daily events, shining a harsh light on how a man once invited into children's parties had become the killer clown. Meanwhile, questions swirled beyond the courtroom. How had Gacy operated undetected for so long? What of the warnings neighbors reported? The strange smell, young men arriving at odd hours, trenches in the basement. Many believed systems had failed. Appeals followed, but the Illinois Supreme Court upheld his convictions on September 29, 1988. All legal options exhausted, Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994, at Stateville Correctional Center. Still, justice left gaps. Years later, new DNA techniques exhumed victims and sought to identify the remains of 8 still unidentified young men. In 2011, authorities renewed the call for anyone with information to come forward. Closer to home, the families in the community wondered, had the front page trial ended the story, or only exposed the beginning of something far deeper? And just when the case seemed closed, investigators found a map drawn by Gacy himself, revealing more than just bodies beneath his house. In the thick of the investigation, when the bodies beneath 82113 West Summerdale Avenue were already changing the face of crime history, detectives uncovered new evidence that turned the case on its head. Among the remains in Gacy's crawlspace were bodies still unidentified, 5 young men whose names remained lost for decades. The Cook County Sheriff's Office and the DNA Doe Project reopened files in 2011 and beyond, using modern forensic genealogy to crack what once seemed uncrackable. Then in 2021, they announced a breakthrough. One of the victims, long known only as Body 5, was officially identified as Francis Wayne Alexander. The man, born in 1955, had vanished, and his remains lay buried beneath Gacy's house for over 4 decades. Yet even as one name was restored to memory, the deeper question emerged: who else? Forensic comparisons and new DNA profiles indicated that other victims may still lie unidentified, and that Gacy's known 33-victim list might only be part of the full truth. Investigators discovered clues that suggested Gacy may have had help, not just in his crimes, but in covering them up. Financial records, missing persons from out of state, and potential accomplices were quietly added to the investigation. Historians now believe the once isolated figure of Gacy may have been enabled by a system that looked the other way, and so the twist became impossible to ignore. The story of John Wayne Gacy was not just one of a solitary killer. It was a story of missing names, unanswered questions, and the possibility that some of the truths were still buried. One discovery suggested the killer wasn't alone, and that someone else may still be out there. By the time investigators finished excavating Gacy's property in December 1978, the quiet Chicago suburb of Norwood Park was no longer the same. 33 young men and boys, ages 14 to 21, were confirmed murdered. 26 were found in the crawlspace, 3 beneath the garage, and 4 thrown into the Des Plaines River. The number stunned the world, making Gacy one of America's most prolific serial killers. But long after his 1994 execution by lethal injection, questions refused to die. In 2011, Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart reopened the case to identify the remaining unnamed victims. Using advanced DNA testing and forensic genealogy, 2 victims, William George Bundy, identified 2011, and Francis Wayne Alexander, identified 2021, finally had their identities restored. For families like those of Michael Marino, whose mother spent years begging authorities to retest samples, the truth arrived painfully late, but it arrived. Every match brought relief and heartbreak in equal measure. Experts say Gacy's case reshaped how American law enforcement tracks missing persons and serial offenders. The establishment of national databases such as CODIS, Combined DNA Index System, and NamUs, National Missing and Unidentified Person System, stemmed directly from lessons learned in the late 70s. Sociologists still debate what allowed Gacy to hide in plain sight: a respected contractor, precinct captain, and community volunteer. Neighbors remembered him hosting block parties. Police once dismissed missing person reports as teenage runaways. It was a pattern of neglect, systemic bias, and denial that let a killer operate for nearly a decade. The case forced America to confront an uncomfortable truth. Monsters don't always live in the dark. Sometimes they shake our hands. Today, filmmakers and investigators continue exploring Gacy's legacy through documentaries like Peacock's Devil in Disguise, 2021, which features rare interrogation tapes and the final interviews of detectives who hunted him. Their voices remind us that every body exhumed beneath that house carried a stolen future. Dreams cut short by a man whose public mask fooled even his closest friends. The reflection goes beyond horror. It's about accountability, in how institutions listen, how communities notice, and how justice can be delayed yet never entirely denied. 46 years later, the ground at 82113 West Summerdale Avenue is quiet. But for the family still waiting for answers, silence is not peace. Was this the isolated evil of one man, or the symptom of a society that refused to see what was right in front of it? May their memory outlive his name. Decades later, the story of John Wayne Gacy still echoes through America's collective memory. Each time we revisit his case, we aren't just studying a killer. We're examining how a community, a justice system, and even a nation failed to see the signs right in front of them. But here's the question that keeps haunting investigators. and maybe all of us watching tonight. How many more Gacys have walked among us and unnoticed, respected, trusted, until it's already too late? Do you believe Gacy's story ended with his execution in 1994? Or are there still truths buried under decades of silence? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more deep investigations where every clue, every file, and every unanswered question is brought to light, subscribe now to Crime Scene 24/7. Because here, the truth never sleeps.